she said, talent alone is not enough. Work transforms talent into genius. I'll go with the rookie.
Ooh, that is good. Say it again. Talent alone is not enough. What was the second part?
Work transforms talent into genius.
If you're in the business of selling knowledge or expertise or skills, you know that to win a client, you need to have a conversation. That's where you get to demonstrate your knowledge and your expertise, but it's getting harder and harder to book those appointments. That's why today we're going to be talking about how to get more meetings with potential clients. And to help me out, I have Wendy Weiss. Now, she's the founder of the Salesology Prospecting Method that generates predictable sales revenue results. Wendy has helped 775 businesses increase qualified appointments and sales faster. She is the author of the Sales Winners Handbook, Essential Strategies to Skyrocket Sales Performance, and Cold Calling for Women Opening Doors and Closing Doors. She is also a former ballet dancer. So let's start there, Wendy. What does ballet dancing and getting meetings or appointments, what do those two things have in common?
Oh, they have so much in common, James. Thank you for asking. Yes, my first career was I danced in a ballet company. I danced with with Pittsburgh Ballet Theater, and I danced with the Cincinnati Ballet. I was never ever supposed to be a sales trainer, but I feel that everything I know in life and business I learned in ballet class, and this is what I learned in ballet class. It's my three-step salesology model. Step one, if you're a dancer and you have a performance, you don't just run out on stage and start dancing. You have to warm up, or you risk a career-ending injury. If you're an elite athlete, you're going to do the same thing. You're not just going to run out on the field and start playing the game. You've got to warm up so you don't have a career-ending injury. In sales, there are things you need to do so that you don't hurt yourself, hurt your bottom line. If you have a sales team, you don't want them hurting your bottom line. You need to warm up. Step two, if you're a dancer, you don't just run out on stage and start dancing. You've been rehearsing for months. And when you rehearse and you do the same steps over and over and over again, you get muscle memory. Muscle memory is automatic memory. You don't have to think about it. You can just execute. So step two is to rehearse. This is a communication skill that can be learned and improved on, and you need to practice it. Just like elite athletes don't just run out on the field, they work with their coach and they practice. Step three in the Salesology model, because first we have warm up so you don't hurt yourself and don't hurt your bottom line. Step two, you rehearse, you practice so you get muscle memory, so you can just execute. Step three, perform. But you only do step three, perform, after you have done step one and step two. The problem is most people just jump to step three, and that's why they struggle. That's what I learned in ballet class.
Well, I can definitely see that. I can see as well too, ballet requires discipline, right? It requires focus. When we ever hire a sales professional, we give them a little speech called the Robbie Williams speech. Is Robbie Williams famous in America? I know he's hugely famous in the UK and Europe, but does he ring any bells to you?
Robin Williams, you're talking about?
I'm getting a bewildered look. But there used to be a boy band in the UK called Take That, and one, there's always like one star that like steps away from the group and they become super famous. And he does arenas across Europe. That's how big he is. And I often say to our sales professionals, because they all want to be Robbie Williams, they all want to get on stage and they all want to boogie and they all want to dazzle. And I say the funny thing about Robbie Williams is that every performance seems different, but he sings the same 11 songs 5 nights a week, 50 nights a year, the same 11 songs, which is the discipline that you would have got from ballet, rather than deciding to spin off and do a pirouette or I don't know, fancy move on the stage.
Absolutely. All the great stars of American Ballet Theater, the New York City Ballet, all the ballet companies, they went to ballet class as small children, and then they went to bed. They kept going, and as teenagers, they kept going. And even when they are working professionals, they take a ballet class every single day, because that's the only way you get to be a ballet
So in a second,
dancer.
I want to unpack these 3 steps, but I've got a question. I don't know if it's a cryptic question. I was thinking about it before. Who do you think is more likely to close more consistently? And the key word is consistently. The seller who relies purely on their natural flair. So let's say the seasoned seller with heaps of natural talent without a system, versus the rookie, newbie, awkward new seller that is going to follow a system. So we've got the seasoned pro without a system, the rookie seller with a system. And I know that there's always the devil's in the detail, but which do you think would be able to close more consistently?
I'm going to quote
Ooh.
Anna Pavlova, who was a great Russian ballerina of the late 19th and early 20th century. She said, talent alone is not enough. Work transforms talent into genius. I'll go with the said,
good.
Talent
Say
alone.
it again. Talent alone is not enough. What was the second part?
Work transforms talent
Work
genius.
transforms
I'll
talent
go with the rookie
into
genius.
That is absolutely so true.
Yeah.
So let's break this down. There was a warm-up, rehearse, and
work
and I don't know if you've ever read any books
into
read any books by Dan Sullivan, but he talks about how to map the week. And he actually says that the people that are the most successful, we're talking about elite athletes again, performers, they actually break their days into performance days, rehearsal days, and in theater, he calls them backstage days. So, and then you've got the off days where you don't do anything at all. And that's where you need to recharge your batteries. You said warm up, rehearse, and perform. What are some examples of warm up in the sales concept? In the sales context?
Absolutely. Great question. We focus on the front end of the funnel. We focus on prospecting, on getting more meetings. And if you want to get more meetings, the steps in your warm-up are, first of all, to very clearly identify the target, because everyone is not a great target for you. So you actually want to have a very narrow focus. Who are you reaching out to? What describes the parameters of a best fit type prospect for you in your market with your offering? Then, what's your message to these people? What is the problem that they have that you can fix? And how do they talk about it? Yeah. Not how do you talk about it? How do they talk about it? And actually what this means is you need scripts. And I know everybody gets like really nervous when I say the word script, but the script simply means that you are thinking before you are talking. You are prepared. You know what you want to say, you know how you want to introduce yourself and the pain points and the questions you want to ask and all that kind of stuff. You also need a process. How many times are you going to reach out? How are you going to reach out? Are you calling? Are you emailing? Are you texting? Are you reaching out on social media? What exactly is it that you are doing? And how many times are you going to do it? And what happens if you never reach them or they never respond? What are you going to do? So you need a map.
And so that you're not caught up using your brain all the time. And I think that for sales and selling, we spend so much time in our brain talking about the what ifs and what if I do this and then they do that, or what if I call and they hang up on me or whatever. Whereas, as you're saying, if you've got a clear target audience and you've got a script that you know matches their headaches, their obstacles, their aspirations, their desires, you can just think about that. And theoretically, they should want to hear from you because you know the target audience, you know the problem, you have the solution. So they should be grateful. But if you've got the script and the process, you don't have to use your brain, right?
That is exactly right. And I'll just share with our audience, I've been doing this for 24 years and I've never had anybody hang up on me, or so rarely that I can't remember it if it happened. And that's a process, that's a function of knowing what you're doing. It's not a function of winging it. And the people that we work with, they're not being hung up on either. It does not go with the territory as everybody seems to want to believe. It just does not, if you've done your homework. And the thing about having that process and the scripts and knowing your target market is, I have so many clients that tell me they want to hire a salesperson. And I say, great, what do you have in place for them? And the answer is almost always nothing. And you need to have these things in place so your newly hired salesperson doesn't cost you boatloads of money and get you nothing in return. And when you have that process, when you say to somebody, go reach out to some prospects and set up some meetings for me, there are a lot of questions they have. Like, what do I say and who do I say it to? And what if they ask me a question? And what if they hang up on me? And what if they don't respond? What if they don't respond to my email? Like, what do I do? Have it all mapped out. Then it's really easy.
Is that everybody wants to hire what we would call a 360-degree seller. And that's someone that can find the leads, book the meetings, have the meeting, prepare the proposal, do the follow-up, all this other stuff. And they are out there. And we've recruited a few over the years. But the reality is that, well, 360-degree salespeople are really, really expensive. Whereas if you've got a process and someone can step into your organization and you say, I've got a process for collecting the leads, or here is our process for doing a sales call, or here is the proposal, the standardized proposal that we've got, because we've got target audience clarity, as Wendy said. So all our proposals are largely the same. You don't have to write a new one for every new client. You're setting them up for success. When you're working with people, Wendy, are you largely working with the business owner who's doing the sales, or are you working with sales teams, or is it a bit of a mix of the two?
It's a bit of a mix of the two. Thank you for asking. We are often working with sales teams, and then we also often have we have business owners that do our program with the idea that they're going to set up the system and prove the model. And once they've done that, they have a system, they prove the model, they have numbers, they have metrics. If you're a very busy business owner and you're having success at prospecting and you know your numbers, you can go and hire someone and they should be able at a bare minimum to do what you do because you're doing other things. So that's something that we do all the time.
Dan Martell, I just read his book, and he says, getting someone else to do what you do 80% of I'm going to mess up the quote. Getting someone else to do what you do 80% as good as you is 100% freaking awesome. Because you're not doing it and you can focus on these things. Also in this book, it's quite interesting. He suggests that if you're going to, the book's called Buy Back Your Time, but if you're going to delegate other people the different roles and responsibilities, he actually suggests that sales is the last piece of the puzzle that you delegate, because as the business owner, you can be the best person at the sales and marketing. But as Wendy said, you can set the metrics. If you go, this is how many leads I can get while prospecting, or this is how many meetings I can book while prospecting, this is how many clients I can close. If someone can do 80% as well as you, they've probably got potential. But you become the benchmark. Otherwise, you hire someone and it's a real mess. Now, I want to come back to the topic in a second, which is how to get more meetings. But I also just want to observe something here. When Wendy was talking about the warm-up piece, she talked about 3 elements, and she said getting target audience clarity. And she said, if you have target audience clarity, you understand the problem. In our world, Wendy, we talk about the 3 Ps: 1 person, 1 problem, 1 product. So if you have target audience clarity, you can figure out what their problem is, and then you can create the product. That could be a lead magnet or a gift, because you go, this person is this person is a agency owner. The problem is that the clients expect something different, so let's give them a client expectations agreement. It could be the meeting that you book. But in this instance, if you're booking a meeting, 1 person, target audience clarity. Number 2, 1 problem. What's the problem? The 3, the product. You're the product, because you're going to go and solve their problems.
Exactly. And the beauty of this is you're not reaching out to a prospect and saying, hey, give me your credit card right this second. You're essentially saying, I'd like to have a conversation with you about fill in the blank problem, because we've been able to fix it.
And it's crazy. And here's the other side of the equation. You know, we're talking about like fear and people getting in their heads. If you're walking down the street and you meet someone and you say, how are you feeling? And they say, I've got a headache. And you've got a packet of paracetamol or whatever in your back pocket. You've got a headache tablet in your back pocket, and you don't offer it to them. What kind of human are you? You're not a nice human.
Exactly.
And we know this. We've got problems that we can solve. Unpacking the 3-step formula, warming up, right? We need target audience clarity. We need to know what their problems are, scripts, having a process. I thought this was funny, Wendy. Before we caught up, I think your VA filled out a little bit of a form for us so that we could capture some information and grab your photo and some other things. And one of the questions was, what is the size of your email marketing database? And you have quite a large one, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, something really big like that. And then the question was, what's working for you right now? I don't know if you filled this out or your assistant filled it out, but do you know what the person said? He said telephone.
Phone calling.
Telephone. So we've got this database of 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. I said, what's working for you? The telephone, which is so different to what other people would say. I mean, like we're into the 3rd decade of the 20th century. And everyone's obsessed with the latest trick or hack. And you said telephone. How important is telephone for you? And how does that fit into your own business model?
It's really number 1. Whether often we lead with the telephone. I mean, I figure you call somebody up, they may pick up the phone and you can talk to them right then and there. But even, email marketing, whatever it is you're doing, at some point you have to talk to them. So the phone, and then the thing that is really very interesting, there was a study done at the University of Cincinnati, I think it was, Booth School of Business, where they studied written communication and spoken communication. And basically what they found, spoken communication is like the phone, a Zoom call, you're face-to-face with someone, even a voicemail. And written communication could be an email or a text or maybe a social media message, a direct message. They found that if people hear you talk, they think you're smarter and they're more likely to take action on whatever it is you're talking about. And so one of the things that we do, part of our system is when you are sending an email, you call first. And if you get voicemail, leave them a voicemail and send them an email. It's not either or, it's both.
This is really cool. How to get more potential, how to get more meetings with potential clients. Let's come back to the stepping stones, the direct steps in a minute. But the 3-step formula you talked about before was the warm up. What about the rehearsal stuff? How do you do that? I mean, like, I don't know. I would feel a little bit silly rehearsing on my own, but I'm sure you've got strategies to help someone rehearse on their own. How do we go about rehearsing?
Well, all the sales trainers do role playing. That's what rehearsing is. But let me share with you why it's really, really important. I'm going to tell you another ballet story. The supreme test for a ballerina is 32 fouettes. A fouette is a turn on one leg. You turn all the way around without putting your other leg down. 32 times in a row on your toes without budging from the spot on the floor where you start. The standard wisdom is that in order to go out on stage every night and nail 32 fouettes, you have to be able to execute 64 fouettes in class. So that's 64 turns on one leg in a row without putting your other leg down on your toes, not budging from the spot on the floor where you start. Sounds crazy, right? The way you learn how to do that in class every day, you do fouettes. You're there with your teacher. You do 1 or 2 fouettes and you fall down. You get back up and you do another couple of fouettes and you fall down. And pretty soon you do 3 and then you fall down. But if you keep doing it over time, you can actually execute 64 turns on one leg in a row without putting the other leg down on your toes, without budging from the spot on the floor where you start, which means you can go out on stage every single night, nail 32. That then becomes easy.
And the crazy thing is, we're talking about sales. We're not talking about something that could potentially injure us or bloody our toes. We're talking about something that we could do with colleagues. It's something that we could do in the shower. Yeah. How do you help people do this in practice?
Well, we run coaching calls, coaching sessions where we actually, we actually practice. I'm going to be your prospect. How are you going to introduce yourself? Right. Go. I'm your prospect. I'm going to say, well, I'm already working with someone. What are you going to say? Go. Just practice. Say it out loud over and over and over again. And maybe you feel a little bit silly, but it just, over time, first of all, nobody has ever died from role playing. Swear to God, I've been doing it for 24 years, never happened. And you just get that muscle memory. And then what happens is you can speak with confidence. Because one of the things we know about prospecting, and actually sales in general, but I'm speaking specifically about prospecting, is most of the time when you ask someone for a meeting, if they do not say yes, most prospects say the same things over and over and over again. They say they're busy, they're working with someone, send me information. You just need to practice so you know how you're going to respond when they say the things that we know they're going to say. There's 2 different
scenarios here. One is you're meeting someone for the first time and you want to book that meeting, and you could be warm calling them, you could be cold calling them. And as Wendy says, they're going to say the same stuff again and again and again, like now's not the right time, or I need to speak to my business partner, or whatever it's going to be. They're going to say the same stuff again and again and again. The other alternative is you get to the pointy end of the deal. It's the very end of the conversation. You're about to close. And again, they say the same stuff again and again and again. Like, I'm not sure we can do it right now. I'm already working with another agency, or whatever it might be. They're going to say the same things again and again and again. And if you practice, you don't think about what you need to say. There's not this awkward pause and you come across as a goose. You just say what it is that you've been primed to say.
And those are also qualification scripts, which are different from prospecting scripts. But if you use qualification scripts well, you can find that stuff out early so that you don't go to the end of the process and hear it. You hear it up front so you can either counter it or move on and not spend a lot of time.
When is the best time to handle an objection? And the answer is before it comes up. We talk about that as the qualifying scripts. We call that the triage process. We sometimes have a triage phone call, and we also use online forms as well too. So if someone books a meeting, we can ask some of those questions. And before the meeting, we tend to send a little bit of a sequence of emails as well too, which again handle those objections and get them a little bit more excited about the email, because we are talking about a skill that's as old as humans being able to speak, really, which is trying to convince your fellow caveman to give you a rock in return for a spear. But that doesn't mean that we can't complement it with all sorts of other tools such as email and other things. So let's bring this back to how to get more meetings with potential clients. And I saw something where you had a strategy somewhere. Now my mouse is broken. I'm banging around with my mouse. How to increase your qualified appointments by 73%. How do you go out and get qualified appointments? What strategies can we use to go and get some qualified appointments?
Well, you mean other than picking up the phone?
Well, we can start there. Let's break
prospects?
it down. If we're going to pick up a phone, where would you even start? Where would you might find that list?
Well, finding a list is really easy. The part that's hard is defining the parameters of what makes a good lead for you in your market with your offering. And we start with very concrete parameters. I will ask the client, describe an ideal prospect, and they often say to me things like, oh, well, they should understand the value that we offer, and they should need fill in the blank, or they should really want fill in the blank. Those are all subjective things. It is great to find prospects that really understand the value of your offering. However, that comes later. The first thing you have to do is use very objective parameters. If you're B2B, what's the size of the company? Revenue, employee count, is it a particular industry? And I believe in niching by industry, because you've all probably been asked, well, have you worked with anybody in my industry? You know why they ask you that? They're qualifying you. So if you can say up front that you specialize in their industry, that just eliminates, as you were just saying, James, that just takes away that objection.
We call that use case certainty. And it's I mean, like, it's so valuable when you understand the target audience. Otherwise, well, we think about it this way. If you're walking through a crowded mall and you want to grab someone's attention and you yell out, hey, you, no one turns around. But however, if I yell out, hey, Wendy turns around. And that's no different to saying, hey, do you work in biotech? You know, there's an industry vertical. And they go, yeah, I do. It's not subjective, as Wendy said, it's absolutely objective. If I say, hey, are you a web developer? Because that's my target audience. They go, yeah, I'm a web developer. What's even better is that I could say, hey, does anyone know any web developers? And everyone goes, I know 3, right? Whereas the alternative would be, yeah, who needs my service right now? You can't go onto LinkedIn and send messages to people who are thirsty, right? You don't know who's hungry or thirsty, but you do know the size of the organization, the industry that they work in. And then you can make predictions about that, about the types of headaches that they have. Yeah, who's the decision maker? And it's the same thing, you know, like, I imagine that your target audience are dentists, right? So you're a web developer, let's say, and your target audience is everyone, you know, and so you're going onto LinkedIn and you're trying to find people with a subjective need, people that need a website right now. Never going to happen, right? But then you say, okay, but my target audience are going to be dentists. So you say, okay, well, let's reach out to dentists, because we can say, are you a dentist? And someone says, I am a dentist. And I say, do you know any dentists? I know 2 dentists, right? Everyone knows a dentist because we always see a dentist. But then you got the decision maker, and the decision maker for the website for a dental practice might not be the dentist. It's probably the practice manager. So we go, our goal is to hit the dental practice manager. And as Wendy, you said, then we figure out what are their problems. What is the problem of the dental practice manager And then that opens up the opportunity to connect and engage without coming across as a pest.
Absolutely. And going back to the topic of scripting, if you are able to identify the problem that they have that makes them crazy, that you can fix, and you can articulate it succinctly, they will talk to you.
I love that expression, the problem that makes them crazy. I'm going to borrow that. We talk about the headache that they have before they know they need you. And we do that because otherwise we say to our clients, what problems do your clients have? And if they're a web developer, they'll say they need a website. If they're an SEO person, they'll say they need SEO. Whereas if we say, what's the headache that they have before they know they need you? They'll say, they'll think bigger, right? But I love this. What's the problem that makes them crazy? Because most of the time it's not what you do. You have to connect what makes them crazy with what you do, because otherwise they can't join the dots.
No, they can't connect the dots at all. I tell my clients to use the expression, what keeps them up at night?
Yeah.
And plug in what they think what keeps them up at night. They need SEO. Probably not.
Yes, it is one of those things. Honey, I can't get to sleep. What's wrong? I need search engine optimization. It's not that. It's, honey, I can't get to sleep because no one's going to my website and I'm not getting any clicks, which means I'm not getting any clients, which means
and we're not making any money.
And I'm not making any money. Exactly. And that's what makes them crazy. We didn't talk about the performance piece.
Well, the performance piece follows the warm-up and the rehearsal. And what enables performance is that you've warmed up. So you are prepared and you have rehearsed. So you have automatic muscle memory. You can execute. That is what enables performance. And, sometimes people tell me that they get very nervous if they've never sold before, they've never prospected before, and they get really nervous. To me, that's a lot like stage fright. Yeah. You're waiting in the wings, you're waiting for your cue and you think you're going to throw up. But then you hear your music and you get out on stage and you dance. Well, what enables that is you've warmed up. So you're prepared. You've rehearsed. You have automatic muscle memory. And you hear your music and you go dance. It works exactly the same way. That if you do the steps that come before, it just makes everything so much easier.
It's so fascinating that your analogy is ballet, because when we talk about the sales call, we actually talk about 3 acts. We talk about 3 acts on a sales call. There's usually a bit of discovery at the beginning. You've got to deliver a little bit of value. That's at act 2. And act 3, people talk about closing. We talk about diagnosing the problem, because if you diagnose the problem, you can give them some options and some solutions, and they can then close themselves. Again, I want to bring this back to our topic today, how to get more meetings with potential clients. Should we role play something, or should we pretend this is a situation? I said, where do we begin? You said lists are easy to get, and you're absolutely right. We talk about things that are super obvious. You can go onto Upwork and you can say, get me a list of intellectual property business owners. You can go onto LinkedIn and you can search up a list of, as I said before, dentists or website developers. That bit's the easy bit. Once we've got the clarity, we can reach out. You're using the telephone. Do you warm call or do you engage with people via their DMs in LinkedIn? How do you go do that bit?
Any of the above, but I usually lead with the phone because they might pick it up.
Yep, the phone, and then they pick it up. And if they don't pick it up, did you get this guy's?
I'm going to leave them a message. I'm going to send them an email. I'm going to reach out to them on LinkedIn, and I'm going to do it multiple times because all the research shows it takes at least 8 touches to get someone to respond. So even if you are calling, if you only call them once, you're probably not connecting. So call, email, text, social media, call, email, text, social media. And the messaging, is really, really important. I'll give you an example. Before COVID, a lot of our business was folks in commercial real estate. And they would hire people right out of college, call them junior brokers or associates, and they would tell them to go prospect, but generally the managers did not want to manage because they were doing, many of them were, active brokers, and they were doing deals themselves that could be worth, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in their pockets. So they didn't really want to manage anybody. But they'd bring on these young people right out of college and tell them, go set up some meetings. And we had a script. This was the entire script. We'd introduce ourselves and then say, we specialize in working with managing directors in the commercial real estate industry that are sick of micromanaging junior brokers that aren't producing.
Boom, mic drop.
And if we got one of them on the phone, they had junior brokers, they would start laughing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was really fun. It was really easy to set up a meeting after that. That was the entire script.
Absolutely. We do this with the same with you. We do it with email. We do it with LinkedIn messages. We don't do too many cold stuff. We've got people that might opt in, and then we'll follow up with a warmish call. But I'm gonna bring this back to the beginning. I'm gonna bring it back to the topic, and I'm gonna define something that Wendy has said that is super obvious, right? So we've got a 3-step formula, but the first step is the warming up. We need target audience clarity. For me, that is super obvious, but still people are out there trying to close anyone and everyone with a pulse. If you don't have target audience clarity, you can't figure out what their headache is going to be, which means that you cannot pull together the type of script that Wendy just dropped. We have a client, Louise, sends out a message on LinkedIn, and it's to HR managers. And it said, I've put together a difficult conversations checklist. And that this is for your managers because they're not as good at managing difficult conversations as you, which means that you're stuck putting out all these human dramas. Just give this to your staff. And that is a problem that drives them crazy. I didn't say it as sweet and succinct as she does or Wendy's script, but that's a problem that drives them crazy, which is the script. The fourth piece is the process. And Wendy has highlighted that at the top of the funnel, it might take 8 touches to get a response. And you're not going to reach out and engage 8 times unless you have a process to follow. Something as simple as a checklist. They are 4 pieces of advice that are blindingly obvious, painfully obvious, super obvious, yet most people don't do them unless they're lucky enough to get the access of the wisdom of someone like Wendy. Any final words of advice for our people before we wind up?
Thank you for asking. I'd like to invite everybody to access our Master Your Sales Mindset video series. And I believe you have the link.
We'll have the link, and we'll drop the link underneath this, whether you're listening to it on as a podcast or watching the YouTube video. Find that link because obviously this is just a teaser of Wendy's wisdom in the bigger picture, and I personally have learned a lot. I hope that you guys and gals have too. So thank you, Wendy. Thanks for your time.
Well, thank you, James, for inviting me.